Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic. This is going to be my last video for 2021. For my last video, I decided to do a top 5 video. So this video is going to be the top 5 best books I've read in the past year. And so how I'm going to do this list is most of the books on this list I've reviewed on my channel in the past, with the exception of 2. On top of that, I almost put a book on here that was a reread, so I decided to take it off to put one that was a first-time read. So all the books in this video are books that I've read for the first time this year. And so it was a pretty good year. Read quite a few books this year, and a lot of good ones, but there can only be 5. So with that said, let's get into the video. Top 5 Books of 2021. Number 5. The Boat Who Wouldn't Float by Farley Mowat, originally published in 1969. It seemed like a good idea. Tired of everyday life ashore, Farley Mowat would find a sturdy boat in Newfoundland and roam the salt sea over free as a bird. What he found was the worst boat in the world. She nearly drove him mad. The happy adventure, despite all that Farley and his Newfoundland helpers could do, leaked like a sieve. Her engine only worked when she felt like it. Typically, on her maiden voyage with the engine stuck in reverse, she backed out of the harbor under full sail, and she sank regularly. Hal Farley and his varied crew, including the intrepid lady who would marry him, coaxed the boat from Newfoundland to Lake Ontario, is a marvelous story. The encounters with sharks, rum runners, rum, and a host of unforgettable characters on land and sea make this a very funny book for readers of all ages. So this was the first book I read going into 2021. I usually read a lot of science fiction and a lot of horror books and some fantasy sprinkled in there, but I get tired of reading those after a while and need to break it up sometimes. So I got to venture out into some kind of genre that I usually don't read. Now, this book was recommended to me by a coworker quite some years ago. And so I looked around, found it in the bookstore, but then it actually sat on my bookshelf for a while. And I finally got around to reading it last year. And I was just in the right mood. That's all I can say. And I was just tired of science fiction, tired of horror, tired of fantasy. So I needed to do something different. So I pulled this book off the shelf, and it was actually really refreshing, and I really enjoyed this book. It's based on true events, but it's got a lot of humor sprinkled into it. And especially if you're Canadian, it's a very Canadian book. It all takes place in Canada. And I really enjoyed the book because the majority of the story takes place in Newfoundland, a province I grew up in and around the island and stuff. And it just makes for a really interesting read. And on top of that, it really made for an interesting snapshot on the time period that this book is written in as well. So this was a really good book, and without a doubt made my top 5 easy. Number 4. Tiamat's Wrath, Book 8 of The Expanse by James S.A. Corey, originally published in 2019. The galaxy has been opened up to humanity through the Ring Gates. It should have been a bright future and the end of scarcity for the human race. However, High Consul Duarte and his Laconian Empire, who now control all systems with their advanced warships made from proto-molecule technology, have other plans for humanity. With the crew of the Rosinante separated from each other and desperately trying to fight back against the Laconian Empire as part of a fledgling underground resistance. As Duarte meddles with advanced technology he can barely understand in a bid to become immortal and cement his power, he risks angering an ancient alien force that could wipe out all of humanity. So, this is Book 8 of The Expanse, Tiamat's Wrath, and I have to say this was a really good one. Now, there's only one more book left. It's out in hardcover. I haven't picked it up yet because I'm waiting for the softcover version to come out. But so far, these last trio of books have been really solid and really good, and some of my favorite ones in the series overall. Especially that last book, I really liked that one. It was really good. This one was another really strong entry. What I'm starting to find with these Expanse books is that there's 9 books and it's almost like they're doing a trilogy of trilogies. And so far, this final trilogy is turning out to be one of my favorite ones over some of the past ones. I think the story is really solid and the writing's really solid, and I really like the idea of the Laconian Empire. I really like them having them as villains or antagonists in this final trilogy of books. So there's one more book to go, and then I believe next year they're coming out with the final book, which is going to be a collection of short stories that takes place around the whole universe of The Expanse. But awesome book, and easily one of the top 5 that I read this past year. Number 3. The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, originally published in 1969. Genly a human from Terra, an envoy of a confederation of worlds called the Ekumen. He is sent to the planet Gethen to persuade the Gethens to join the Ekumen. However, the Gethens ambisexual, which informs all their culture and society. This creates a barrier of understanding for Genly to overcome before he can complete his mission. So this book I read very recently. This is like one of the last books I've read this year. Not the final book, but the second last book I read this year. And my edition, I got it from the Folio Society. And it's a book that I've been looking at reading for a long time because I've been wanting to go back and read some of the older science fiction. And Ursula K. Le Guin, I've read some of her short stories in the past that I really liked. So I wanted to give one of her full-length novels a try. And this is the first one I went into. And I'll be honest, the reason why I bought this book is because the Folio edition was so beautiful looking. But it was a really good story on top of that. And this was one of the ones that I reviewed on my channel actually quite recently. But it's one of those books that I could easily see myself rereading again. Because it's a lot like Dune. It's there's just a lot of themes going on inside this book. And I think you get more out of it with each reread. Where most books, the majority of books I read, like I read them once and then that's it, it's done. I usually don't read them again unless I really enjoy them. And I can see this being one of those books that I would read again. And it just, the world building is really good, and the whole Gethen society, it's really thought out well, how this whole idea of they don't really have a gender. They're kind of like almost like a non-binary race until they go to mate. Then depending on who the person is and the circumstances of the relationship, they'll either switch into a female or a male to mate. So it makes for a really interesting society. And this creates like this complete and utter misunderstanding between the main character and his mission to try to get them to join this confederation. And then this story takes place in a larger universe called, I believe, the Hainish Cycle, I think it's called, the Hainish Universe. And I talked about that in my review too, but now that I read up more on the Hainish Cycle and how that whole thing works, I think I would actually get even more out of it reading this book the first time and knowing that it's connected to something bigger, which I didn't do that. And I went into the book and I was kind of lost for the first couple chapters and kind of took me a bit to get my bearings. But once I did, the story was really good and easily one of the best books I've read this year. So with that being said, let's move on. Number 2. The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, originally published in 1983. A retelling of the story of Arthurian legends from the perspective of the female characters. The story follows Morgaine, a priestess of Avalon, and King Arthur's half-sister as she struggles to push back against the growing popularity of Christianity that is pushing out and threatens to snuff out the old pagan belief systems. It is a battle of two ideologies, with King Arthur and Camelot at the center. So, like I said, I don't read a lot of fantasy. I mostly read science fiction and horror. But for a long time now, I've had this kind of fascination with the legend of King Arthur. And a lot of that was started when I first saw the John Boorman Excalibur movie. And I rewatched it a few years back, and I started thinking, I would really like to read one of the books based on that legend. But there's a lot of them out there, a lot. of books written based on the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So I really didn't know where to start. But The Mists of Avalon was a book that I had heard about over the years. And so it just kept popping up. And then I asked some people I knew that read a lot. I know someone who had read the book, and they told me it was really good and recommended it. And so this was the second book I read in 2021. And it took me a while to read this one, to be honest. It's quite a long book. It's almost 1,000 pages. It took me about 3 months to finish it. But it was worth it. It is a really good book. And it really feels like you go on a long journey with these characters, because you follow them through their whole lives, and there's like jumps in time and stuff like that. And the character of Morgaine is a very well thought out, very fleshed out character. And in most of the stories, she's usually the evil sorceress or a bad guy. That's what she was in the John Borman Excalibur movie. But in this one, they kind of do, the writer does a few role reversals where Morgaine is the good one. Well, it's kind of like a lot of gray areas in this book, to be honest. There's no clear-cut good guys or bad guys, but what's interesting about it is, like I said, the book has lots of shades of gray, and it just really, just the world it's set in, it's really fleshed out, and you really get into the story, and you're really there. So it's hard to explain, but it's a really well-written story. And this is another book that I had reviewed on my channel as well a few months back, and went into a lot of detail about it. But basically, it's a battle of ideologies. You have, the old pagan religions and all their traditions, and now the modern world is starting to creep in, and coming with it is Christianity. Christianity is spreading over the globe, and it's becoming the dominant religion and pushing out this old pagan one. So you have two spiritual ideologies kind of warring at each other. The pagans, they kind of want to coexist with the Christians, but the Christians don't really want to coexist with them. So, and Arthur's kind of caught in the middle, because he's the king, and he's trying to play both sides. He's trying to be, I guess, a servant to two masters, and it's not working out. He's trying to please the pagans and the Christians, and he's caught in the middle. And you have his wife, Guinevere, who's pulling him towards Christianity. And then you have his half-sister, Morgaine, who's keeps reminding him, you have a duty to the pagans, because they're the ones that put you on the throne, and things like that. What's interesting, as the world becomes more and more modern, and as Christianity takes more and more hold, you have the island of Avalon. That is, the magic of that island gets weaker and weaker, and it becomes harder and harder to find, and it starts to get lost in the mists and all that. But a really good book. Probably, if I had to make a top 5 fantasy books that I've read, this would definitely be on that list. I don't exactly know where it would fall on that list, but I'm pretty sure it would be on my top 5. And it's making me want to go out and find some more books that are based on the story of King Arthur, and try out some more stories. But really great book. Definitely give this one a try. It is a long story, but it's worth it. Number 1. The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, originally published in 2008. Long has humanity asked the question, are we alone? Humanity has searched the skies for a signal, and sent our own, never thinking of the consequences that finding that voice in the dark would bring. When astrophysicist Yi Wenji finds a way to amplify outgoing radio waves, sends a signal out into the void, and 8 years later receives an answer. However, it is one humanity could never have expected. So easy, this is the best book I read last year, of 2021. It is an awesome science fiction story. This is another one I reviewed on my channel, and I just can't say enough good things about it. It is, now the idea is not original. There's been a lot of alien invasion stories done in science fiction, lots of them in movies, tons of them. But this one puts such a unique spin on it that it just makes it all feel completely fresh again and new. It's amazing. Now, like my full review I did on this book, I can't really go into too much detail about it, because this is a book that the less you know about the story going into it, the better it's going to be. And I can't wait to read the 2 follow-ups because this is a trilogy. So I'm going to try to read both follow-ups this coming year. But it is a really well thought out, very well done science fiction book, and it's pretty hard sci-fi, but it's got some really crazy concepts that it's just going to blow your mind when you read it. I know, because I was just thinking, wow, like how did the guy even think of this? This is such a bizarre concept, and it makes for a really, really entertaining book. But definitely, the less you know going in, the better this story is. So it's not really, I can't really say a whole lot about the story without really spoiling anything, but it is an amazing book. Easy, #1, best book I've read this year by far. No comparison. And I can't wait to read the follow-ups. So again, if you get the chance, this should be on your must-read list for next year if you haven't read this book already and you are a science fiction fan. Definitely check this one out. So that's my top 5 books of 2021. So overall, as far as books go, it's been a pretty good year, considering the circumstances, everything that everyone's going through, not only this year, but the year before. Hopefully that wet blanket that's been over society with this whole situation that's going on, hopefully that starts to lift in the new year. I really hope so anyway. And read a lot of good books though, and there's still a lot of good books out there that I'm looking forward to. Some of the books that I'm still have to read, I'm really looking forward to reading is, Red Mars, the first book in the Mars trilogy series. I'm really looking forward to reading that one. Neuromancer is another one that I'm really looking forward to read. And I'm going to start reading some more cyberpunk stuff. I've got a couple of cyberpunk books picked up. And the first one I'm going to read is Neuromancer. And then the next one I want to read after that is Snow Crash. And also with the news of Denis Villeneuve doing the Rama film at some point in the future, I want to pick up Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama is another book I'm looking forward to reading. So I don't know how many of those books I'll get in the next year. I'll at least get a couple of them in there anyway. But there's lots to look forward to, lots of stuff to read. So I'll be curious to know what kind of books you guys have read and what kind of books you look forward to reading, and what some of your best books of the past year has been. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.